we go in and we do whatever the work needs to be, and work begets more work. We get referrals, we get repeats. The next job might be 8 hours. And so if we end up doing a 15-minute long job, we're fine with it. It's just an investment in our future.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk Podcast, our regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. I'm joined by Mike Evans, founder of Fixer.com, a handyman service in Chicago. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk Podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding Podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can also leave feedback and ask questions there too. Mike, it is a pleasure to have you on the show. You and the family are healthy, I gather?
Yeah, everybody's healthy. Thanks for having me. We've all been sort of in place and sort of hunkered down at my house for the last couple of months, but everybody's good.
Is this state of Illinois gradually opening up to stuff again?
Not even a little. We're still locked down tight. So yeah. I think in the next few weeks it should start to open up a little bit.
So this is an interesting scenario here. You emailed me last week about a discussion we had in podcast 207, and then in subsequent podcast episodes, we talked about the same issue. And we were discussing what a profitable, small job and home repair business would look like. And in this segment, we made a lot of assumptions that are inconsistent with your experience, is how I would describe it. Can you please tell us a little bit about your business and how it works and how you got started doing it?
Sure. So Fixer is a scheduled and on-demand handy person service. And we help homeowners fix or upgrade or beautify their homes, both through on-site video visits and video consults. And the people who do the work, the fixers as we call them, they're employees, not like gig economy contractors. And so that allows us to be thoughtful and focused on training, which allows us to guarantee quality, consistency, and craftsmanship over the long haul as we retain employees, as opposed to using like a gig economy model.
And how many employees do you have?
There's about 50 of us.
Wow.
Yeah. And the split is about 80% handy people and 20% office folks. And
did you start out doing this business, or is this an evolution of a larger contracting business? How did this all come about?
So not how you'd expect. So way back in the day in 2002, I created a different company called Grubhub. And we did, so that's obviously a food delivery giant now. And in the process of building that company, really came to understand a lot about how you market across a national scope and things like that. One of the things that and also how to handle call centers and some of the things that are actually necessary, I think, for a handy person business at scale. Some of the things that got away from me with that business, it got to the point where, from a competition perspective, they're charging too much to the contractors, and so that happened sort of after I left a few years ago. And so when thinking about what business we wanted to do next, we wanted to bring together our ability to do marketing and our ability to sort of think thoughtfully about large scale processes and stuff like that, and actually make like a social impact as well. And so we were thinking about what industry sort of looks similar in terms of there's ability to reach out and connect with customers who have a hard time engaging in the very front end of the service, but then doing it in a way that is helpful to the community. And so we realized pretty quickly that there just aren't enough tradespeople to go around. And so there'd have to be a training center involved. And so we launched an internal training center pretty much right away at our company. And so we train people from scratch to be handy people. We at first, obviously, we had to hire experienced folks so we could have the trainers. But the idea behind it is we're actually trying to increase the number of people going to the trade. So it's an entry path into the trades with sort of a slick consumer experience and interface so that customers have a high quality experience.
And are these mostly young people who are just starting out in their careers? Or these folks who are making a transition? Where do they come from in the labor pool?
So our youngest is 19 and our oldest is 66. So
Hmm.
Pretty broad range. And there's been a variety. So for the more experienced fixers, a lot of the experienced handy people, um, they like the fact that we do the marketing and the customer acquisition, and they can focus on fixing things. And so some of them have just shifted from doing things solo to doing things as part of a group. The other thing that the more experienced fixers really like is working as a part of a team, because it can be a very lonely sort of experience to be a solo contractor going into customers' homes.
Yeah.
And then they also like the fact that we can have conversations with customers, and if there's a challenge or friction or a billing issue or something like that, like the office staff will work through that, as opposed to the fixers who generally like to either fix things or be training people to fix things. And then for the younger folks, it's been a little bit more of like launching a new career, for some of them. And then we have some people in the middle who had a career and are shifting to a new one. Most of the folks who are in the most of the fixers we've hired who are in the 20 to 30-year-old range usually have like 1 or 2 years of college. And then we're like, nah, this isn't my jam, and I want to try something else. And so we became an alternative to that.
What do you, I mean, how do you train people? Do you train them for specific areas of home repair, or do you have this like kind of general knowledge base that you're trying to get to get them to the certain speed?
So day one is like how to anchor a TV in drywall, right? And once you train somebody how to do that, and you use toggle bolts or real anchors as opposed to just putting a screw in the wall,
Hmm.
and you do it correctly, you can send somebody out to a customer's home to do it, especially since it's a 2-person job.
Hmm.
So it very quickly goes from an in-class training session to a sort of an apprenticeship mentorship model, but they're sort of like micro apprenticeships. So somebody might go do on days 2 through 8 of their training, they might do 3 or 4 different TV mounts, right? And then on day 4 of their training, they're learning about how to do some of the electrical work. If for example, changing a dimmer switch, putting in a dimmer switch. And obviously the first thing that you train folks to do is turn the power off. Like, don't be a hero, right? Just turn the damn power off. And so we can pretty quickly get the fixers into people's homes and earning build hours. And then we train specific tasks. So we don't teach Ohm's law on day one like a trade school would, right? We teach turn the power off. Here's the screws that you unscrew. This is what you're looking at. This is how you troubleshoot problems. And then over the course of a year and a half, people go from I can do 1 thing, 2 things, 40 things to I can do just about anything in a home. And then it just takes years to get the additional expertise, right? So things like, okay, well, I can mount a TV in drywall, but what about brick or concrete?
Yeah.
And so we have a sort of a scale of fixers who have different levels of experience, and you can always call a more experienced fixer and rely on a team member to talk you through something as you encounter something that's outside your experience. And so that's a pretty typical apprenticeship mentorship model. Anyway, that was a long answer to your question.
It's good. It's all good. One of the things you comment on specifically in our conversation in the earlier podcast, what we made about how folks are often shocked at what you have to charge to make a viable business doing handy person work. Folks are just not expecting to have to pay several $100 perhaps, or $100 even, to put a TV on the wall. How do you? But your comment was that they're willing to pay if the experience is good. Can you talk a little bit about that? How do you guarantee a good experience? What is different about your business versus other handy person services?
So, let me start by talking about what customers aren't willing to pay for. And I think that'll shine a light on both what we're doing and then hopefully there's a lesson to be learned here about what other folks can do. So what customers aren't willing to pay $300 for is to make a phone call to somebody who doesn't answer the phone, where it goes to voicemail, where they get a call 3 days later. Somebody tells them they're going to be there next Tuesday, and they show up on Thursday, and then they make the whole place dirty as they come in. They don't clean up the drywall after it's done, and then they're getting nagging calls about sending a check that's already been in the mail, right? So that entire customer experience there's so much ugliness and friction in that. And note that I didn't say anything about the quality of the actual hanging of the TV on the wall. That might be very good, but all of the experience from ordering somebody to scheduling them to sticking to the schedule to cleanliness to billing, like all of those things have to be really sharp and on the ball for somebody to be willing to pay a premium, right? The desire to pay the premium is there, or the not desire, the reality that the premium price is there. It already exists because of the simple mismatch in supply and demand. There aren't enough people around to do this work, and there's a lot of demand for it. And so what happens is jobs get delayed 6, 7, 8 weeks for something to come in, or handy people really like the idea of, and we like this too, like you don't really necessarily want to drive 45 minutes to a place, do 2 hours of work, and then drive 45 minutes to somewhere. I mean, the amount of time you can actually spend billing goes down really quick if you have a bunch of small jobs as opposed to large jobs. And so part of that whole process is as you have, like, when, what we're doing is something different. So somebody gets in touch with us, and they don't call. You can't call us on the phone, right? You text us or you go online, which is how most people prefer to interact right now. The phone is not, it takes 20 minutes. It's not you don't have any record of the communication. You don't have clear understanding of what the work is going to do. So we started with a very simple principle of like, just engage in text. Don't pick up the phone to talk, right? Which sounds sort of counterintuitive, right? If people want to call, why don't we answer the phone? And the reality is it's just not as good a communication channel as either web or chat or text. And so we start with that. And then immediately we're having a conversation about what needs to be fixed. And then we're scheduling somebody for tomorrow. And then we show up on time, right? And so just that series of things already sets us up for success. So when we say it costs $100 an hour, and ultimately it probably will be higher, it'll probably be closer to 115 or 120. When we charge that rate, people are like, oh, that's fine, because somebody's going to show up tomorrow, and I trust that they're going to be high quality and that they're going to be consistent and stuff like that. And then the other thing we do on the phone, it's pretty simple, is, hey, and while we're there, what else? Like, can you take a couple pictures of other things you might like us to have fixed? And so that 2-hour job pretty quickly can become 3 or 4 or 8 hours. You don't want it to become 40, because then you need to get into project management. And there's liability issues and things like that. But the 8-hour job, 8 hours at a customer's house is the ideal amount of time to spend, right? And so there's a sales element to it. There's a customer service element to it. There's polish, and all of those things go towards somebody being like, okay, well, this is the right price to pay for this product.
Do you train your folks on looking around the house and suggesting other things to work on? I mean, is that part of the training experience for your employees?
Yeah, we aspirationally, yes. It's a little bit hard to train people on both safety and skill and sales all at once. And so we do sort of a token effort on that. A lot of times it ends up being more like at the end. Well, there's a couple things. It's hard to train in addition to everything else, because we're trying to train skills and safety. The other thing is that most customers will bring it up. And so we usually just wait till the end of the somebody calls us because they had one thing on their mind that they need to have fixed.
Or they need it right away, right?
Yeah.
This needs to be fixed right away.
So the initial, when we go into someone's home, is fix the thing they called us for. Like, don't try and sell them on 8 other things. Like, do the thing they're anxious about. And then once we've proven that we do a good job, that's a good opportunity to say, what else can we do? Or do you want me to come back another day, or whatever the case is? Yeah.
So one of the business models for handiwork that I'm familiar with uses subcontractors. And so this big company, they're usually tech companies, right? They price the work, and then as a subcontractor, they toss it out there, and you either take the job or you don't. And if you don't take it, someone else takes it, right? And you don't have any say in the negotiated price, except you either take the job or you don't. Your business doesn't work that, right? You have you're establishing the price of the job, and this person is making an hourly wage regardless of what they're doing. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. We, because we pay people well and we guarantee 40 hours a week, and we take the risk of whether the company takes the risk of whether or not the handy people will be busy. it just has a certain price point that you have to do that at. And if our original thesis is the supply of people to do the work is constrained, then I really wonder if some of the models that are out there for getting customers, call it Angie's List or Home Advisor or Thumbtack or any of those folks. There's what's called adverse selection on those marketplaces, and what that means is the best people are busy. The highest quality contractors are busy, and so the idea that somebody else will just take the job at a set price, isn't necessarily somebody else at the same quality that we can provide. And so we're comfortable with just not engaging in that game. We do advertise on those platforms, but that's sort of as a last resort. Like, it's not our primary way of doing business. Our primary way of getting customers is having customers tell other customers about us.
I was just about to ask you how most of your clients find you guys, and can you tell me about that? Do you do marketing, and what kind of marketing, and what is your yield, I guess, is the simple way to ask.
Yeah. What's tricky is there's a lot of education for customers. Educating them on why a high quality product, premium product, is the right thing to use. It's hard to do marketing. It's hard to do that in a 4-line, 5-word thing on the side of a bus. We've tried, and it's worked pretty well. And we've used Home Advisor and Thumbtack and some of those others. But like I said, just having really high ratings on Yelp and all of those other, all of the other review sites and Better Business Bureau and all of those things, that's sort of table stakes. You have to start there. Mm-hmm. And then it's just a variety of things. There's no silver bullets. You kind of have to have a bunch of lines in the water to catch a fish, right? You don't just rely on any one thing. And the most powerful piece of that is repeat and referral. It's way easier to prove that we've done a good job and have one of those folks refer us than it is to get a new customer. But that only grows so fast. That said, that only so fast is pretty quick.
Do you have plans to expand beyond the Chicagoland area? Is that your ultimate goal? Do you want to make this a national company?
Yeah, we do. Absolutely. That is the plan. It's funny, in the last 8 weeks, that's become more of a reality because we shifted from going exclusively into people's homes to doing video consults, where we share our expertise with people online via video in a format very similar to what you and I are doing right here, where we get two people on the screen.
And the thought is that the folks will fix their own things after a consult with a professional. Is that correct?
That's about half of what's been happening. The other half has been just getting people started. Like, I've got this water heater in the basement. There's a bunch of pipes going into it, and something smells. Like what am I looking at here? And it's worth $15-20 to just talk through it with somebody and say, oh, you need a plumber. And they're like, I need a plumber for a gas line? They're like, yeah, that's one of the things plumbers do. And they're like, really? I thought they just did water. And you're like, well, it's pipes. You have to seal them. It's kind of all the same. And it depends on the municipality, right? Like, it depends on local regulations and building codes and things like that. But yeah, just helping people get started and giving them advice is probably half the video consults. And the idea is that the video consults, about half of them turn into a job that we do. Right. And so, at least in Chicago. And so the idea is, okay, well, we can just do that nationally and open this training center that we have in Chicago, open that in 10 different cities around the country and become national in the same way that the NFL is national, right? They're actually only in 30 cities, but they're national, right? So that is the plan for sure.
But we've made the observation in discussing these kind of business models is that you need to have a pretty large population center for handy services to work, right? You can't be out in the middle of the prairie in the Midwest, right, and make a profitable business doing service work, right? Because you just can't travel the distances. You need a population center. Is that true, or am I missing something?
I don't know yet. We're gonna try it. We'll see if it works.
Yeah.
I think, it sort of depends. You probably get down to the 1,000th largest city before the density really starts to become a problem. Now, can you put a training center in there and have 50 people like we have in Chicago, or 500 or 1,000 or whatever it's going to end up being? Probably not. It's probably not dense enough for those kind of numbers. But having 2 or 3 in a city like White Plains, New York, or Madison, Wisconsin, I think it's doable. I mean, I think we'll see. The idea that we're going to supplement it with these video consults, the idea that like, if you do 2 video consults and a service call in a day, and then that's enough billable hours to sort of make, to be able to pay your salary and generate some extra margin. I think it's possible. It's a big experiment. I don't know. I'm guessing. We started this business and it's all speculative, right? We're like, we're going to try this, see if it works.
I guess that's a good question. How long have you been doing this?
We've been doing the business for 3 years. We've been doing video consults for 8 weeks. So right now, video consults are 20% of our business. So that ramped up very quickly compared to the initial 3 years that it took us to launch something. Part of that also was we weren't educated. First of all, I'm handy, but I don't have a background in the trades beyond, like, I started a lawn mowing business when I was in high school and worked on cars. But we weren't educated either, and we had to figure out how to train adults and open a training center in an environment where almost all the trade schools have closed. And so that took a solid year and a half to figure some of that stuff out and throw a bunch of stuff on the wall and make some mistakes before we really figured it out.
Where did your curriculum come from, or has that been totally developed in-house?
Yeah, the knowledge all came from the 40 fixers that we have. The actual like formatting and packaging of that, we hired a curriculum creation company to help to interview those folks and sort of get their knowledge down on paper. But it's not paper; it's all digital. But
Sure.
Yeah.
How do you pre-qualify prospective clients so you're not wasting time on a project that they can't afford or that you don't want to do? One of the things that is difficult in these small project type models is doing this so you're not wasting a lot of time. Are there things that you just don't want to do? You mentioned that you didn't want a project that took 40 hours as an example, but what other kinds of things do you shy away from?
So we don't pre-qualify. We waste the time. I'd rather waste the time. We have had customers who say, I need you to change a light bulb. And on the surface, you're kind of like, really? But actually, when you get there, if it's a 16-foot ceiling and it's an elderly person, it actually turns out to be quite challenging to change that light. And it's shaped such that you can't use one of those extension poles to do it. You actually have to set up scaffolding or whatever, right? So we found not to prejudge. Like we go in and we do whatever the work needs to be, and work begets more work. We get referrals, we get repeats. The next job might be 8 hours. And so if we end up doing a 15-minute long job, we're fine with it. It's just an investment in our future. We also charge for we don't charge a site visit fee, but we charge for at least 1 hour. So we don't, on the small end, we don't pre-qualify. We take all comers as long as it's within our skill set, right? So for example, we can't do roofing because there's legal issues in Illinois related to doing roofing without a license. So we're not going to do that. And then on the flip side of that, with big jobs, anything that goes over two person days, so 8 hours for 2 fixers or 1 fixer across 2 days, anything larger than that, we realized you need to have a project manager. You start getting into sequencing issues. If you do a series of 15 different jobs over the course of 3 days that are all about 3 hours each, and you mess one of them up, I don't know why this is, but customers often demand a refund on the other 14 jobs as well. And so even though you did good work. And so we found that there's a lot of risk towards these jobs that have continually creeping scope. And so anything over 16 hours, we assign a project manager to it, and the project manager has a billable rate. And so we'll do them, but we once it gets above that size, we always charge for the materials up front and a percentage of the labor up front once we get over 16 hours.
Has the pandemic made your business model more challenging? You mentioned that you're now doing the teleconferencing, but like, are people still willing to have your tradespeople come into the house? As an example, do they wear masks? Like, how is it working in the short term?
You know, I think the thing that we spent the most energy on in the first couple of weeks of the pandemic was safety. Um, how do can we go into people's homes safely? Can we keep them safe? Can we keep ourselves safe?
Hmm.
And we found that very quickly there had to be a culture and a baseline of like, we got your back. And so immediately saying, we're not going to furlough anyone, we're not going to lay anybody off. If you're sick, stay home, you'll be paid. We immediately added 80 hours of sick time into everybody's pool and said, take the time if you need it. Do not come into work sick. So just keeping customers safe, like that went a long way. When the handy people aren't worried about, can I make my rent? So even though I got a cough, I got to hide it. If that's not a concern, it sets the stage for safety first.
Yeah.
And we've always had a strong safety culture anyway, because this is the right way to run a business. And so we started meeting daily, and sometimes it was twice a day to discuss like changes to safety regulations. And then we involved the fixers themselves in those conversations instead of being some sort of top down sort of idea. Now, when we go into people's homes, we're always wearing a mask. We text before we get there and ask ask the customer what their preference is. We like them to stay 6 feet away, but we can talk through doors if they want to. We can talk on the phone while we're there. Yeah. And so we have a variety of things. And then we're very strict about enforcing them. Everybody's got to have a mask, have the right number of masks, gloves, and sanitizing wipes, and all of those things. And we ask the customer to sanitize ahead of time. We ask them to designate a restroom that we can use while we're there, that they won't use while we're there. Mm-hmm. And so there's this sort of variety of things, a checklist that we send to the customer, a checklist the fixer has. And so we're able to do that. The other things that we do is we've ramped up. So obviously we do video consults. We've ramped up some of our larger jobs with project managers. If there's no customer on site and we can go in there and there's 2 fixers and they can stay 6 feet apart and they can work on cabinetry or whatever, it's a lot less exposure than if we're going to a customer's home where there's somebody there. So we shifted a little bit in terms of our sales process, moving towards big jobs, big jobs for us, which is above 16 hours. It's a small job for most contractors, right? And then the other thing that's really helped in the last few weeks is the weather's gotten nicer. We've just been doing more outside work, wrought iron fences, decks, siding, things like that. Everything's flooding in Chicago right now, and so we're doing a lot of like stuff like that. Although some pumps are inside, but a lot of the work is outside, so that helps just keep everybody distant. It's helpful.
So do you work on your own house? Do you hire your own fixers to fix stuff, or do you do it yourself? What is your place like, and do you like the hand stuff?
So 3 days ago, the tongue on my handle, like getting in my front door.
Oh yeah, the thumb latch, right?
The thumb latch, yeah. I depress it and the lock wouldn't retract far enough, and so I immediately scheduled a video consult, and then Jen, one of our fixers, gets on, and she's like, "Well, it's probably lubrication. So first clean it." And so I'm cleaning it, and she's like, "Now we're gonna lubricate it." And she's like, "But don't use an oil-based lubricant. And if you don't have anything, use a pencil and just get the graphite on it from the pencil." And I'm like, "This is great. This is great." And then we also was able to shift it over like a quarter inch, which was enough to get the retraction far enough. And so I did that. There's been other times I do jobs myself all the time. I don't know. I probably had fixer over a dozen times to do various things. I did not wash the deck myself. I'm happy to pay somebody to do it. I'm happy to pay somebody to do it. And so. And I've gone on calls too, and I'm trained on all of our electrical work. I have an electrical engineering background by trade, and so switching to do electrician work took some training, but I took to it pretty quickly. And so I've done some dimmer switches and some swapped out a light for a fan, and some things like that. So I'll go on the electrical calls, but that's where my comfort level is.
That's awesome, man. It has been a pleasure talking to you. I wish you great success with your business, and I certainly see that there's a need in the marketplace for it, and it seems like you're doing it the right way.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's really fun to be involved in, especially the like creating an entry path into the trade that takes both women and men and gets them started in the same way that we get homeowners started on jobs that they don't even know where to start. Like being able to do that for somebody's career where they can get paid well and there's an entry path into it and they don't just have to have an uncle who teaches them. It's been exciting. I mean, it's been rewarding to start to have some success in this.
Has it been more difficult than starting Grubhub?
Yes.
Really?
Absolutely. Just because of the training element, because you're you're impacting people's lives, right? We're impacting our employees' lives in a way that it's important to just be thoughtful about the way that we do it, right? There has to be some stability. There has to be some long-term planning. Really what it comes down to is it's harder because there's more at stake for me. Like it's much more individual in terms of the interactions that I have with people. And the industry is, I think customers are used to paying less than the market rate because of some poor experiences. And so changing that mentality has been a little bit tricky. Anything you want to ask or tell our listeners? Yeah, I mean, check out our video consults. If you're a homeowner and you have something that you need fixed, or if you're a pro and you want to talk to another pro about it while you're on a job, we're happy to do that too. So yeah, I mean, that's right now as the pandemic hit, that's really where we put all our eggs in that basket to get us through it. Dig it.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks to Mike for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. And please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Once again, thank you so much, Mike, for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. Stay safe, everybody. Happy building.